So this actually happened to me today, and it felt like something I should share here as a caution to others. I live in a small city not too far from Edmonton, and recently there has been a series of armed robberies happening in and around the area. It's made me worry about walking alone at night, so I found myself home at night more often than usual. It's not the worst, but I dislike having this feeling of unease, but I manage and make do. So today, my dad and his girlfriend were invited out to a party, meaning I had the whole house to myself. I pretty much had the evening planned out. Watch some episodes from my favorite soap opera, then switch it over to some classic horror films. So I said bye to them as I left and quickly loaded up the TV. It was not long after I had started up the horror movie that I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't a regular knocking. If my TV had been any louder, I probably wouldn't have been able to hear it. Thinking it was nothing at first, I went over to the door without pausing the movie just to confirm, but to my surprise, there was someone at the door. I opened the door and there stood a slim man. Looked to be in his mid-30s, and that's all I can pretty much say. I'm not the best when it comes to describing people, and I didn't really go out of my way to analyze him at that moment. I couldn't even tell you if his jacket was gray or black. The man said he represented a security company and was going around my area to offer his company's services. He asked if the owner of the house was home, to which I told him no, and that he would not be home until late. He then began giving me some quick information about his company, that it was the only one that was locally funded, that it's already being used in several homes on my street, and that it's smart device friendly. He even showed me a laminated piece of paper that displayed all the different devices that could work with the security system. I told him that we weren't interested in having a security system at this time. He proceeded to ask me if my family leaves the house for long trips, which would be a great reason to get the security system. Looking back now, this was a huge red flag, but I answered honestly that the house was almost never empty, and that we never really went on trips. I also added that he could speak to my dad tomorrow if he was coming back. He told me his team would be leaving to another city tomorrow, thanked me for my time, then left. I went back to my movie and pretty much forgot about the visitor. Movie finishes, and I decide to check my Facebook to glance the buy and sells. Near the top of the feed is a shared post that caught my eye immediately. What I read next made me completely freeze up. It was from a woman who had also talked to a representative from the exact security company I had been advertised. This guy knocked on her door softly too, which immediately caught my attention. She noted how the guy never gave his name of business card, something I didn't even realize happened for me until I thought back. Overall, she was very suspicious of the guy, so she asked he wait outside as she got some pen and paper to write down his phone number. When she returned, he was gone. The next-door neighbor told her that they saw the man running down the road and into an alley. But the biggest fact this woman dropped? She contacted the security company. It does actually exist, and they told her that they didn't send anyone out to the city to go door to door. This shared post is blowing up, and it seems that it occurred to a lot more people than just me. Some people even showed video from their security cameras of these employees. There's definitely more than one person pretending to work for this company, one even being a woman, and a lot of strange activity being reported. One person going into the backyard without permission, another person standing in front of the house like they're scoping it out. Knowing all of this now, it makes the entire encounter with that guy at my door terrifying. Was he scoping my house too? Would he have tried something if I didn't answer? I also wonder, was he hesitant to try anything because I didn't pause my movie? For all he know, I could have had a friend over. Luckily, nothing serious happened for the rest of that night, but I will be extremely cautious from now on. If there's one thing I would advise, be suspicious of anyone you don't know that comes to your house. Just because someone says they work for a company doesn't make it true. You don't know who they are or what they might actually want from you. I was at home alone in my previous apartment in a not-so-great neighborhood. My apartment was on the ground level, and my bedroom window faced a back alley. A dumpster sat less than 2 car lengths away, where homeless people often rummaged. Just before dawn one morning, I heard a tapping at my window. My back was to the window, and my eyes were now wide open. It was still dark outside. I sleep with my lamp on, and my worn-out vertical blinds were missing a slat, causing a 6-inch gap. So I knew that whoever, or whatever, the source of the tapping, could see me lying in bed as plain as day. The tapping was brief, maybe 5 or 6 taps, so I spent the next 5 seconds or so frozen, bizarrely trying to convince myself it was anything else but a person watching me and tapping on my window. Maybe an animal? But then came more tapping. Now, I was faced with the terrifying reality that someone had been watching me through my window in the dark for God knows how long, and he'd decided to tap on the window. Had one of the homeless people become aggressive during their dumpster dive? Something told me that nothing good could come from turning around and looking at the window. If he got me to look at him, what then? Remember, my back was to the guy, so I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes and pretending I was too groggy to hear him. I stood up and hazily made my way out of my bedroom, as though I were going to the restroom or something. Once I was out of his sight, I ran to the phone to dial 911, considering whether to forget any embarrassment of being in my t-shirt and underwear, and bolt out my front door, which was out of sight from the intruder. I just wasn't sure I could outrun whoever it was, or whether anyone would help me if I couldn't. Before I could make a decision, I heard the loud pop of my window being pried open. I thought my heart would jump from my chest. At the same time, I could hear my upstairs neighbor Mike descending his stairs. I opened my door a few inches and peeked out to ask for his help. Mike was a big guy, and I'd heard he was trained in martial arts of some sort. He didn't hesitate to respond, hustling to the back of my apartment to see what was going on. Within a few seconds, I heard rumbling and someone being thrown against the wall and into the bushes. A few moments later, Mike came around to my front door telling me not to worry about seeing that guy again. He'd beaten him up pretty badly. I wanted to believe Mike, that the would-be intruder was maybe dumpster diving, but that he would, hopefully, never venture this way again. But it wasn't a homeless person. According to Mike, when the guy escaped, he ran to the front of my building, hopped into a red sports car and sped off. My neighborhood wasn't a red sports car kind of place. The police later told me that the intruder was likely someone who'd seen me out somewhere and followed me home to find out where I lived. So, Mr. Window Tapper, I still wonder what you would have done if you'd gotten inside before Mike caught you. I wonder if you still follow me, and because of that, I often find myself wishing that Mike had put an end to you. If you found out where I now live, let's never meet. So a few important things before I tell my story. 1. My kitchen has a big window next to a door. At the right side through the window, you can look at our backyard. It doesn't have a curtain. I always sit at our dinner table to work on school things and stuff, which is placed in front of the large window. 2. We also have 2 dogs, Shih Tzu, Malteser mix. They're very sweet, but they bark a lot when they hear something outside our house. 3. When this happened, I was home alone with my little brother, 13. 4. My neighbors have a cat that walks around our house a lot. With that said, this is the story. A few months ago, my parents decided to go on a little holiday together for 2 days. My brother and I were fine with being home alone, and we didn't want our grandparents to babysit us. My parents agreed and they left that Saturday morning. The whole day was just normal. Everything went like it usually does. When it was about 11:30 p.m., my brother and I went upstairs to sleep. I put out the lights and locked the windows and doors. Everything still seemed usual. At about 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my dogs loudly barking. They do this pretty often because of the neighbor's cat walking around our house. I thought nothing of it and went back to sleep. Usually the dogs stop barking in about 5 minutes, but they didn't stop. I thought this was really weird. I got out of bed and checked on my brother. He was still asleep. I decided not to wake him up and walk downstairs myself. I went downstairs. My dogs were barking towards the large kitchen window, which wasn't that weird since the cat walks in our garden a lot too. I put a light on and walked around the kitchen to see if something was off. Everything seemed fine. I then checked if maybe my dogs were in pain or something. They weren't. I then looked outside to see if the cat was walking around. The cat was nowhere to be seen. This made me feel very uneasy. After this, I didn't feel like sleeping anymore, so I sat down at the dinner table to watch some YouTube and chill out a bit. After like 10 minutes, I started to feel uneasy again. I had this weird feeling of being watched from the window. I decided it was better to shut the lights and go back upstairs. Because I didn't feel safe, I grabbed a kitchen knife to protect myself if anything was about to happen. When I got upstairs, I checked my brother again. He was still safe and asleep. I sat down in our hallway so I could hear the things downstairs better. After a while, my dog started barking again. At this point, I was so scared that I was almost crying. I decided to call the police and then walk downstairs. The police told me they would be here in about 15 minutes. I walked downstairs as silently as I could. When I got in our hallway downstairs, I noticed that the light by our front door was on. This only goes on when people walk by, but I was stupid and shrugged it off as being the neighbor's cat walking by. When I got back into the kitchen, my dogs were still barking. I turned on the lights and sat down again. Not a minute after I sat down, I noticed movement in our garden behind the large window. I just froze. I couldn't move. My dogs started barking like crazy because they could see the movement too. A pretty large person was moving slowly towards the door. I still had the knife, but I'm 15 and petite. The person looked a lot larger than me, and I surely couldn't win against him. He had to have seen me because he started moving faster towards the door. Fortunately, at this point, the police arrived. They knocked on the front door. I sprinted towards the door and let them in. The man probably ran away because when the police investigated the backyard, he was gone. Later, with the help of a police dog, the man was arrested and charged for attempted burglary. He apparently was arrested a few years ago because of attempted assault. My brother and I didn't get hurt and everything turned out fine, but I am still too scared to stay home alone. To the crazy man that tried to break into our house at night, let's not meet.